my vision was, how do we create an atmosphere that can be expanded around the country? And through conversations with Jimmy Whitehead, he convinced me that there is a need here in Atlantic City where we spur conversations around economic development and economic growth. Thus the reason why we created the Atlantic City Business Roundtable. So I kind of wanted to put things in perspective because I think the conversation was a little all over the place. The purpose of today is to talk about procurement opportunities for minority-owned businesses. That's why we're here. If anyone has ever heard me speak, I've always said I want to be the Maynard Jackson of Maryland as he was of Atlanta. Meaning I want to help create as many black millionaires in the state that he has in Atlanta. And in order for us to be able to do that, we must figure out how do we work more collaboratively together. We must figure out how do we row in the same direction. Because if we don't figure those things out, there do I say we're going to continue to be spinning our wheels. There do I say we're going to have another meeting, another breakfast, and we're all going to be saying the same thing over and over and over again.
Amen.
So in my belief, I believe that the time has come that we stop all the talking, that we must start putting action to the table. That we must start having very frank and sometimes unapologetic conversations on how do we move the needle forward. I stood on this stage a year ago and I made a pledge that I was going to come back to the city and I was going to roll up my sleeves and I was going to get involved. And I met a gentleman that I have a found affection for that has become like a big brother, and that is Clint Walker.
Okay, we need to start a team.
Because of my conversations with Clint, and if you all don't know him, I would ask that you do get to know him, because his institutional knowledge of the city itself is very vast. His understanding of the plight and where we are in the city has given me a profound respect that there are some things that must be done. So the Atlantic City Business Roundtable has 3 initiatives. And Claire, this is one for you. For those that don't know me, I am the former delegate of the state of Maryland. I'm the longest serving chairman of the Black Caucus in the history of the state of Maryland. I'm the former Chief Deputy Majority Whip. I'm the former Assistant Speaker Pro Tem. I served on one of the most powerful committees in Annapolis called Ways and Means, where I served as subcommittee chairman on 2 of those subcommittees. And at the end of the day, I looked at where we are economically, not only in the state of Maryland, but where we are in the state of New Jersey. And before I left the General Assembly, I passed a bill that, Claire, I'm going to give you the bill. It was a bipartisan bill. It said that if you're doing business in the state, that you should get paid in 15 days or less. Because as I know that as a small business owner, I will be able to do more business, keep my doors open, be able to meet payroll and operations expenses, only if I got my procurement paid on time.
Absolutely.
Most businesses have to wait 30 days, 45 days, sometimes 90 days.
90 days.
In order to get their procurement paid. So I passed a bill in the state of Maryland where we had overwhelming support from the Democrats, the Republicans, the Black Caucus, the Veteran Caucus, the Women's Caucus. That was a prompt payment bill. That, Claire, I'm going to hand to you directly, because I would love to see that come to the state of New Jersey, but more importantly, that the businesses in Atlantic City are able to get their procurements paid on time. Claire and Don Guardian, here's another one for you. And this is in direct conversations with Ms. Suarez. When you start looking at the $1.5 billion budget that she has, and you start looking at where Eric's role is at Creek, and you understand what the mayor's role is here within the city of Atlantic City, that we must figure out how do we spur economic development, how do we attract more businesses, and how do we do that in a way where it is creating a more vibrant community. So in the state of Maryland, I helped develop what is called an EDI fund, which is an economic development initiative fund. In the state of Maryland, it is a $50 million fund. I'm asking you, Claire, to help us get appropriated dollars of $25 million that the mayor can use to help bring in new businesses, to offset taxes, and help small businesses that need grants and other opportunities to grow their business. So we can now talk about how do we diversify our workforce, how do we create training opportunities, and how do we provide the resources for those small businesses that need it. And that fund will come from the state that the city can use to then be able to be more attractive. And the third initiative is somewhat selfishly for me. And Mr. Shabazz, I need your help on this one.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to see that we stand up an Office of Small Business Compliance that will work with help with creating policy and regulations to ensure that we are really talking about moving the needle forward for our small businesses. Should Mater Field ever come to fruition, which has been talks of a $3.8 billion project, that there has to be conversations centered around minority participation, there has to be conversations centered around a community benefit agreement, and in order for that to truly happen, that there has to be an Office of Small Business Compliance that fully is focusing in on our small businesses. The Atlantic City Business Roundtable will have a seat at the table. The Atlantic City Business Roundtable will be bold and courageous about what we're doing. And if we're really trying to roll in the same direction, then Eric Shuffler, I would want to sit down with you as soon as possible so we can put our heads together and figure out how do we work as methodically as we possibly can to make sure that we're moving in the same way. Because I believe with those three initiatives, the prompt payment bill, it helps our small businesses. If we create the EDI fund, it helps the city of Atlantic City be able to have the resources and the tools that they need from a monetary standpoint to attract new businesses to come to Atlantic City. This is how we make Atlantic City more welcoming. This is how we make Atlantic City more inviting. And in order for that to do that, we need your help from the state. And then thirdly, once again, is to set up an Office of Small Business Compliance that we're really focusing in on our small businesses. Those three initiatives are the three that the Atlantic City Business Roundtable wants to work with anybody to move that needle forward. There's two projects that I would love to see happen. And one, Mr. Whitehead spoke about earlier, and that is to bring a grocery store to the city of Atlantic City. I feel extremely bad that I ride around this city and that there's not a qualified grocer in the city of Atlantic City. A population of almost 40,000 people that does not have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, quality meat is unfounded. And I know that we tried to bring a stripe right here before, but there are so many grocers that have come to me and said, Mr. Barnes, I'm raising my hand, I want to do all that I can, and I will do what I can to bring my money, my resources, and my talent to bring a qualified grocery store to the city of Atlantic City. And I want to work with the new executive director, the former Matt Doherty, to figure out, let's put our heads together on how do we make that happen. I know that is an initiative of the mayor, and I want to work with him, Khalil Shabazz, and anybody else on how do we make that happen for our people of Atlantic City. And that's part of one of the projects that the Atlantic City Business Roundtable will be involved in. And lastly, I want to work with the Atlantic City Freedom, the city, and anyone else that we really start talking about workforce housing. Because in order for us to talk about workforce housing and the number of people that work in the 6 casinos that are still here, and 75% of them leave out of the city that don't live here, that we have to figure out a way, how do we retain those individuals to stay in Atlantic City? In order for them to stay and want to live in Atlantic City, one, we got to bring a grocery store. But two, we have to find other inviting ways that we're spurring economic development to Atlantic City. And I want to work with anybody that really wants to have a very broad conversation on real estate development and bringing quality workforce housing coming to Atlantic City. My last point, I know that we have the president of resorts here. The Atlantic City Business Roundtable wants to set up a meeting with you and all the other presidents of the Atlantic City casinos and GMs as we start to really frame the conversation on how we making an impact in the city. Because I think it's well overdue and to the point of saying, we have been working in our own silos way too long. And I believe that we need to have a round table in the middle with all the stakeholders at the table. And let's have a very frank conversation on how we move the needle forward. And with your help, sir, I believe we can make that happen. Because I think the time has come that it's our time that we make these things happen. Because the next meeting that we have, I don't want us to repeat the same things that we're talking about now. That we have to quantify these things, we have to measure these things to say that we're really moving the needle forward. So it is my hope that we are moving this needle forward in a way that makes everybody happy. And lastly, I want to give a big shout out to my friend Rick Lasker and his son, who I met last year. Because he had a vision of being in the IT industry. And I've always said that our youth are our future. That if we can start to create an entrepreneur program within the Atlantic City Business Roundtable, then I believe that we will start, along with the mayor's already doing, create that more robust industry for our young people. This goes along with our prosecutor and his community engagement and making sure that we're really being more inclusive about what we're doing. And lastly, all my people from Maryland who came up, they understand that what was said today is that Atlantic City is open for business. And I believe Atlantic City is open for business only if the leadership within Atlantic City truly embraces it. Because it has to be, you're not from Atlantic City, so I don't want to do business with you.
Absolutely.
I want to do business with anybody that's going to make a difference. That's just how I've been, and that's who I am. And I believe if we're truly about making a difference, without any self-interest, that we're really looking out for the people of Atlantic City, and growing an economy, and diversifying our workforce, and making sure that we clean up the city from a homeless population, that way we cut down on crime, and all the other things. The Atlantic City Business Roundtable will have a seat at the table to ensure that we're moving that needle forward. And I want to close with two words that I often use, and that is hope and opportunity. See, in the African American community, we hope for a better day, or we hope that our circumstances change. But Clint, what we're often not given is the opportunity.
Right.
Today we have an opportunity to change the course of time. Today we have an opportunity to tell our own story. Today we have an opportunity to create our own narrative. Today is our day. Today is the day that I ask all of you all to make sure that you go back to your communities, your family, your wives, your boyfriends, your husbands, and you go back and say, I was at the Atlantic City Business Roundtable, and today we're going to make a difference. Today we're going to work more collaboratively with everybody else. Today we're going to reach across the aisle. Regardless if you're black, Italian, Hispanic, white, Bangladesh, it does not matter. Today is the day that we're going to work together. And if we decide to do that today, then we'll have a brighter future tomorrow. Thank you guys so much.